How can I believe in something I can't even see? And what about science? Does it mean faith isn't real? It's okay to have questions. Actually, it's good to have questions. This series is about asking the hard questions and discovering a faith that makes sense.
Well, what is up, YU? How are you guys doing tonight? What do we got? You got people sitting in the corner? All right. I won't pay attention. Y'all sit where you like. All right. Well, welcome to YU. As they said, my name is Coleman. I'm the pastor over Youth United. And if this is the first time that you've ever been with us, I just want to especially welcome you. Over the last few weeks, we've been in this series called Make It Make Sense. And whether this is your first time joining us or you've been with us for the whole thing, I feel like there is something good for each and every one of you. And I want to just review the first 2 weeks and then jump into what we have for this week. In week 1, the bottom line was study creation and love the Creator. And we said that you don't have to turn off your brain in order to follow Jesus because curiosity can be worship. And in week 2, the bottom line was you can trust someone before you know everything. And we centered our trust on Jesus while being okay with asking real questions. So here's the question for week 3. Simply, now what? Now what? How do we live this out on a random Tuesday? How do we live this out during science class? How are we going to live this out with our real friends who have real questions and really disagree with what I believe? How do I deal with this? How do I live with this with my real questions that I'm still carrying? Well, I'm glad you asked. And I believe that in order for us to fully answer that now what question, we have to get rid of a myth that I think all of us believe. And I don't blame you for believing it because I know when I was in high school and even at times now, I believe it. And I believe my parents believe this to be true. I believe their parents believe it to be true. I believe that people have believed this myth to be true for so long, yet I think right now it might be worse than it ever has been before. Here's the myth that I think you and I are believing. That the more you know, the more you are. And I think subconsciously we all believe this to be true, that the more information that I know, the more stuff that I know, the more of a person I am. Because the more that I know, the more money I can make. The more that I know, the more power I can have. The more that I know, the more people will want to follow me. The more that I know, the more that I am. And you know this to be true because of what is popular. What do? We go online and we watch videos about information that tells us about how we feel about specific topics. And then you see people all the time, online and in person, arguing about what they believe. And if you don't have a response, then guess what? You lose. And none of us want to lose. Now, right now, you might think that at this point in the message, Coleman is going to give me 3 perfect answers. 3 things that will silence any critic or anybody who's trying to use science to prove my faith wrong. What Coleman is going to do, he's going to give me 3 perfect arguments so that I can come back and I can say something and they'll be silent and then I will win and they will lose because they don't have a response. Well, that's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you why that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because there has never been a person, or I have never met a person that has come to church because they lost an argument about faith. I mean, think about that for a moment. Relevant has somewhere around 3,000 people that show up on any given Sunday. YU has around 200 students who are a part of it. And I've been doing this for 6 years. I've met a whole lot of high school students. I've met a lot of those 3,000 people who show up on Sundays. I've met almost every single student who has walked through these doors before. And not once have I heard somebody come up to me and say, Coleman, the reason why I'm here is because I was arguing with somebody about faith and they won the argument. And so I figured I need to be here. People do not show up because they lost in an argument. Now, what that doesn't mean is it doesn't mean we shouldn't argue for our faith. I mean, I believe that the things that people like Cliff Nettle and Bryce Crawford are doing on college campuses, I think answering those questions for people who are doubting, have legitimate questions about faith, I think they're doing amazing work, but that is not the point of this series. The point of this series is not to help you win an argument with your science teacher. The point of this series is not so you can go to college and when your roommate starts asking you tough questions, you know the right answer to every single one. The point of this series is you. The point of this series is your faith. So the question becomes, what is the foundation of your faith? Now, I think for most of us in the room, when I think of what the foundation of our faith likely is, it comes down to one of four different things. The first one, and what it might be most likely, is Bible stories. And here's what I mean by that. Like, our faith matters because the Bible tells us so. The Bible says it should be important. I grew up with the Bible, and so I believe it to be true. And so maybe we're inspired by stories like David and Goliath, or maybe we're inspired by stories like Noah and his ark, or Samson, and we heard all these stories as long as we can remember, and because of those stories, we believe them to be true. So the Bible stories make up the foundation of our faith. The second one is other people's expectations. And for others of us, I think if we're really honest, we would admit the reason why we have a faith is because of what other people expect from us. Oftentimes it's your parents. Oftentimes you're here because it's like, well, my parents want me to be here. And because my parents want me to be here, like maybe they'll let me go out later on Friday night because I went to church on Wednesday or I went to church on Sunday. And so maybe they'll let me make the decisions I want to make. Like it's based on their expectations. Or if, I'm in that friend group and they like to follow Jesus, if I wasn't here, then I wouldn't be able to hang out with them. I'd be missing out. So their expectation is that I am here. And so because of other people's expectations, the foundation of your faith is found in their expectations of you. The third one is the tragedy or the trauma of your life. Maybe the foundation of your faith is some sort of tragedy or trauma that has happened to you, and you had a moment where you felt like you needed God. And a lot of times in Relevant, we call this a pivotal circumstance. Maybe you had a moment in your life where I needed God so bad, and I turned to Him, and He was there for me. And this isn't a bad thing, but you're like, my foundation of my faith is found in that moment where I needed Him, and He showed up for me. And the last one is we simply don't have a faith at all. That we aren't sure what we believe yet. Where we're still trying to test the waters on this whole Jesus thing. And we're not sure who is on the right side. So for a lot of you, and including myself, as you go through high school, and you have your faith built on the stories of the Bible or traditions passed on to you or the circumstances you've been through or you're not sure altogether. And maybe for a while that has worked. But here's the problem. What happens when that layer doesn't hold up anymore? What happens when science bumps against the stories that we read in the Bible or the faith that has been passed down to you from generation to generation? What happens when your foundation is suddenly cracked by real life problems? And if the building blocks of your faith are stories in the Bible or the fact that other people, including your family, believe, what happens when a classmate, or what happens when a college professor, or what happens when a significant other challenges your faith and challenges you on what you believe? That if someone brings solid evidence against the stories that you read in the Bible, if someone brings some solid evidence against what your grandma taught you, if someone brings some solid evidence to what you felt that day that you needed God to show up in your life, if someone presents you solid evidence, what happens to that foundation? Is it just going to crumble over the weight of your questions? And I think odds are that's very possible. I think that's why 50 to 80% of students walk away from faith after high school, because the foundation of their faith is found in something that is not strong. It's not strong enough to hold what life threw at them. And if someone can disprove the foundation of your faith, all the faith that you have built can come crashing down. But here's the good news. The good news is it doesn't have to be that way. The good news is science isn't the enemy. Even though sometimes it asks questions about our faith that we don't have the answers for, that's okay. We can build our faith on a foundation that will stand up against any argument or any evidence that science may present. And even better, when we take what science says and not see it as a threat, but it can be something that continues to build our faith more. See, we can build our foundation on something that has stood for 2,000 years and was actually intended to be the foundation of every follower of Jesus from the very beginning. So what is our foundation? And to find out, we have to look at something that happened more than 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, Jesus lived and Jesus died of crucifixion on a cross. See, he was killed because of disrupting systems and structures that the Roman and religious authorities had set in place for people. You see, he claimed to be God. And when you claim to be God, the people who are the religious leaders, they don't like it. And they really didn't like it because Jesus acted in a way that they didn't expect a God to act. Because Jesus lifted people up who are normally looked down on. Jesus, he included people who are normally excluded. He loved and valued people who were typically looked over and passed by. And that was how the world worked back then. If you go against what we believe, then we are against you. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? And for the leaders who were used to having the power and the final say, they felt like their position of power, that it was threatened. And Jesus had to be stopped. So they made a plan for him to be arrested, for him to be beaten, and ultimately for him to be killed. And the craziest part of all of it is Jesus didn't fight back at all. He went into Jerusalem, the place where he knew this plan was going to take place. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He didn't hurl insults at people. He didn't look at the soldiers and the leaders who were falsely accusing him and say terrible things about them. He took it all. And then he died. And in the process of dying, he forgave them. And as the Son of God, Jesus could have made it all stop. But he didn't. Why? Jesus allowed himself to be put to death because as God's Son, he was the perfect representative for what God was like. And being willing to die for the people who turned against him, for the people who didn't deserve it, showed us exactly who God is. Showed that God is love. It showed that God is compassion. It showed that God is mercy. It showed that God is forgiveness. So Jesus died on the cross, and then his body was placed in a tomb. And it was no surprise to the religious leaders because guess what? Everybody died. Nobody was surprised that ultimately Jesus was one day going to die. Every religious leader, every political leader up to this point, they eventually died. And for Jesus, it was no different. But then all of a sudden there was a change. For Jesus, all of a sudden it was different, which is what makes Christianity so different. And according to Matthew, who is one of the followers of Jesus, one of Jesus' close friends, some women were heading to Jesus' tomb after his death, most likely to give him a proper burial and to clean his body following his crucifixion. And this is what Matthew tells us happened next. It says, there was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lied. You see, maybe you've gotten so used to this story by now because you've heard it so many times growing up, but try to imagine how these women would have felt in this moment. They were showing up to a tomb where they expected Jesus to be dead, and there is an angel sitting on the rock speaking to them. Jesus didn't stay dead. He resurrected. And what seemed like something that was done to Jesus was actually part of his bigger plan. See, you don't have to be a scientific genius to understand that this doesn't happen. These type of things aren't supposed to happen, but it did. And since that event 2,000 years ago, the Christian faith has been built on the foundation of the resurrection. And that is the most important building block. So important that the Apostle Paul, the guy who wrote a majority of our New Testament, wrote this: if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. He is saying everything he has devoted his life to, everything that I've devoted my life to, everything that we talk about while we are here at Youth United, everything we talk about on Sundays, if Jesus did not raise from the dead, all of it is pointless. In other words, without the resurrection, everything we believe is pointless. Going from death to life is what gives us the point of what and why we believe. Paul didn't say if the earth was made in 6 days, then our preaching and what we believe is useful. He didn't say if Jonah wasn't actually swallowed by a fish, or if Noah wasn't actually on an ark, or if Adam and Eve didn't have an actual conversation with a snake, then our faith is useless. He didn't say that because those aren't the building blocks of our faith. That is not the foundation of our faith. Because whether science says the earth was made in 6 days or 6 billion years, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it isn't the point. And what happened on the cross the days following and what that represents, that is what matters. And as we continue to prioritize the foundation of your faith, here is what I want you to do, and here's what I want you to remember. Build your faith on what matters most. You see, as we prioritize what matters most, when it comes to our faith in your future, focus on the main thing. Make the main thing the main thing. The bottom blocks, the foundation of your faith should be found in the resurrection. And now for some of you in the room, maybe you agree with me. Maybe you think the resurrection might actually be what matters most, but you need to prove to me that it actually happened. Like, cool, I want to make the resurrection the foundation of my faith, but you're saying that he died? Like he was actually dead for 3 whole days, and then he came back? Like you have to prove to me that happened. Well, I got good news for you. You see, here at YU back in April, we did a series called Doubting God, where we broke down 4 different things or 4 different points about the death and the resurrection of Jesus. And this took us 4 weeks to go through. Each message was like 25 to 30 minutes. There was a lot of information in it. So much more information than I can go into in just one YU sermon. And so if you are somebody who is sitting in this room today who's like, I want to make the resurrection the foundation of my faith, but I just don't fully understand how can I truly believe that to be true, I would encourage you, go on YouTube, look up Youth United, you'll see our logo, select it and find the series called Doubting God. Weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to tell you why the death and resurrection of Jesus truly happened and give you the answers that you might be looking for. The last thing for today is this. I want us to leave this series with just a little bit of time of reflection. I want us to get a little opportunity to also worship. See, this is a time for us to reflect on everything that we've discussed over the last 3 weeks. But even more than that, I want this to be a time for us to worship the one who walked this earth. I want this to be a time for us to worship the one who performed miracles, a time for us to worship the one who lived a perfect life, the time to worship the one who took our place and forgave us for our sins. Tonight, we're going to take just a few minutes to worship together. And today, if you're in this room and you're someone who would say, listen, I hear you. I hear the things you're saying, like maybe Jesus actually did this for me. Maybe he actually did go die on the cross. Maybe it's something that I actually believe in, but I don't know what my next step is. I would encourage you to put your faith in Jesus by asking him to be the forgiver of your sins and the leader of your life. And if you are somebody who wants to take that first step here tonight, after we sing the song together, I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that. So let's stand together and let's sing.
How can I believe in something I can't even see? And what about science? Does it mean faith isn't real? It's okay to have questions. Actually, it's good to have questions. This series is about asking the hard questions and discovering a faith that makes sense.